Welcome back to another Stampede Blue Colts cast. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Matt Danley. Joining me tonight, Stephen Reed. Stephen, thank you for jumping on for a little while with us.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be back.
Absolutely. We're going to be taking some of your guys' phone calls right now pretty soon, but we have a little bit of news we're going to drop on you guys. It's nothing major that there's just such a slow time, of the year, and there just isn't a lot to talk about for the most part. But just catching up on some of the latest stuff. Chuck Pagano said that he wanted to be, back into coaching. That he also said that Andrew Luck obviously, made his career quite a bit longer than it should have been, which is quite true. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah, can't
No,
argue that one.
absolutely. What some of the, a bit of a sour note, I guess. Chris McCain, one of the Colts' new defensive ends, apparently was, charged or something with a domestic battery. Uh, Apparently, him and his fiance didn't know anything about it, but apparently the Chargers had caught in wind of it last year, which is why that they rescinded their. They did something with him during the tag. I think transition tagged him or something like that, and then rescinded it. Apparently, they'd heard of it, but Chris McCain on Twitter was saying he hadn't heard of it. His fiance said that she didn't know anything about it. Was hoping that whoever the woman is that is accusing him of it comes forward because she didn't know anything about it, and they've got a family and stuff to raise. Obviously, Chris is coming into a situation with the Indianapolis Colts where he feels like he's going to be given the opportunity to really kind of showcase what he brings to the table. So um, kind of a sketchy situation there, man. I mean, that's not ideal by any means necessary, or by any means at all. And I think that there's a possibility that this is one of those fake allegations or whatever you want to call it, basically where somebody tries to get noticed or tries to get rich off of slamming and slandering a professional athlete. It's also possibly not. This could also be just lip service from McCain and his fiance, and they know about it, and they're trying to we don't know anything about this. Is just a really touch and go situation, kind of strange, most definitely, but kind of a weird situation to have at this time of year, especially with all the time that's passed. And this apparently was a January incident. I mean, you would think that something would have touched the surface between then and now for all this to occur. But basically all we're doing this time of year, guys, is we're trying to figure out the little bits and pieces of what this team is going to put together. I mean, Stephen, you know how it is this time of year when we attempt to figure out who's going to make the roster, who's not going to make the roster, what the coaching staff's going to do, what their game plan is going to be, this, that, and the other. This is all the season for speculation, and it's like the most insane time of year because there's very little news because the OTAs don't produce much in the way of legitimate knowledge. And there just really isn't anything going on. I mean, obviously, there's no games or anything. Very limited in their practices. We got to wait until minicamp really to get anything of substance out there in the Blues. So, I mean, what are some things that are crossing your mind that anybody would be interested in hearing about, more or less?
I think you hit on the Chris McCain issue. That's it's odd. Like you were saying, that you've got a lot of he said, she said, and you'd have to think of something that would be this this serious of an allegation. I think it was 2 counts of battery, stemming from an incident back in January, and then they had a restricted free agent tag on McCain that they rescinded in April. The Chargers did, and so it's just weird. So you kind of think that the Colts would have known about that, or would have at least found out about it, because they would have. I mean, quite honestly, I have a friend that's a Chargers fan, and they said, did I say San Diego earlier? Probably. I have a friend that's a Chargers fan, and they congratulated me on the signing. They said McCain's a great player, and he was a rising player and played really well. And so he was really confused as to why the Chargers let him walk for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a I would imagine a lot of the other teams were having the same thought process on it. Like, why would you guys let him walk for nothing? Why did you rescind the tag? Why don't you just keep on moving forward with him? Especially at that cheap a number.
Right.
And so you feel like they had to have known about it at least to a point. Um, but at the same time, it doesn't appear that he or his fiance knew anything about it. So who knows? It could all be just a bunch of smoke. It could be just someone trying to get rich, like the Reuben Foster situation. Um, you know, that whole thing was a mess in San Francisco, and it could be the same thing. I mean, there's lots of things that are crossing my mind going on right now. I mean, with the ego stuff that just happened,
Yeah. That is.
that was weird. My favorite was the people there that had said that they talked to 6 Eagles fans that couldn't name the starting quarterback in the Super Bowl.
Those
I
people.
was like, okay, those guys are not Eagles fans, because my wife's an Eagles fan, and even though she didn't follow the team for much this year, just because life gets in the way sometimes, she knew the quarterbacks, and she knew, she was a big fan of him back when Shady was there and Deshaun, but she still follows him to a point, and even with her cursory interest in him this year, she still knew the quarterbacks.
Absolutely.
And so that's one of those things. I think it's interesting that the NFL is like basically kowtowing to a point to certain influences, and I don't think that that's the best strategy for them long term. And I think I've gone back and forth on this. I forget who mentioned it the other day, but it was talked about holding grudges, and that's why these situations, because certain people weren't picked to be owners
Right.
Of the Buffalo Bills, or when they were the Jersey Generals, that kind of stuff. And so you could see that, but at the same time,
it's a really weird situation.
It really is.
It,
like if you follow it, it's like two ships crossing at night, like, and that like they're no idea they're there, and they just keep going on their way.
Yeah.
Not even trying to figure out what the other one's doing, but it is what it is. Hopefully people understand.
Hopefully hopefully that all quiets down, because I mean, really, it is just. I mean, and I've heard from a bunch. We did a show on it, a couple weeks ago or whatever, and I think that a lot of people, everybody has different views on it, and that's totally fine. I mean, we respect anybody's opinion on what. I was given mine, and I think a lot of people who are on even the other side of the argument were kind of starting to be like, I'm just so sick and tired of hearing about it from anybody and everybody.
Right.
And that's really what it is, because it just has become just a real thorn in the side, so to speak, to anybody who legitimately cares about, people in general. And then the NFL, when you're here, you want to talk about football. I get it. And it seems like certain people continue to put it back into the football conversation, which is honestly the way I see it anyways. I mean, people have, like I said, people have their own opinions on it, but it seems like that's really what the, continues to bring it into the conversation is not football people, in other words. So, I mean,
it feels like they're oversaturating the message.
I agree.
And that really is what gets to people more or less. Or it numbs them to the message, which is, I get both sides of it. Not really, but I do. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Well, I feel like one side's not listening, but
right. It's not something I think is probably going to end anytime soon, but there, another actual NFL wide storyline is the supplemental draft that they don't even have a date set for that yet. And guys like Adonis Alexander, Virginia Tech cornerback, Sam Beal. Let's see, who's the other one? Brandon Bryant.
So was that? Which one was out of Western Michigan? The Sam Beal, is that right?
I think that's Beal. Yeah. I think there's another one there that I'm missing, but those guys are all kind of apparently from what I've seen and read and tried to kind of gather as much information on those guys as possible, some of those guys are day two, day three picks. And I don't know that we've necessarily talked about it, but if the Colts are interested in, let me, what are you doing? You eating a bag of chips on me, Steven?
I am sitting in the exact same spot, not moving.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, I don't have any chips. I actually don't. I don't really eat chips, so
So,
I'll eat a peanut butter pretzel, like the best of them, but I don't really eat chips too often.
oh, there you go. So the deal is with this supplemental draft is when a team they bid for these players if they want them. They bid them, and basically what they do is they put a bid in and say, "I'm going to bid on this guy in the fourth round." So basically, what they do is they go through everybody's picks through the draft, and then if nobody wants them or nobody bids them higher than you did, then you get the rights to that player. On the other hand, if you do get the rights to that player, the round that you bid that player in, you end up having to forfeit that pick in the following draft. So this is
Well, and
go ahead.
another intricacy that goes along with this is that it's done. The draft itself is done based on the waiver order, and so
Right.
the Colts at this point have the third shot at any player in any given round.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like you said, they go through the first round, and everybody, you either put your name in for it or you don't.
Right.
And then they find out who's available, who got awarded, who's left.
It
And they
ultimately
do the second round.
it
And
ultimately
they,
is like just a waiver
mm-hmm.
situation. And if you do end up getting that player, then you lose the pick that accompanies it. So I mean that's it's a pretty risky situation, I would say, to do for teams because you don't know. There's so many things that change between now and the draft of every season that you just don't know who is going to come up and be that rising star of the season and kind of take everybody by storm. These guys apparently have some good talent though. I've seen several people talking about them, and I think that Beal was the guy that they have kind of as the most talented of the group.
Yeah, Beal and Alexander are the ones that I've heard.
Yeah, and just we actually have a question on there, and it's from old Colts fan, our guy from the site, and he was asking if Ballard spent his 2019 second round pick, not the Jets pick, but the Colts one that they offered on Sam Beal in the supplemental draft in July. He says that a lot of good things are written about him. He thinks that he kind of takes it as the Colts would be getting a 2019 second rounder a year early. Or do you think Beal would be worth a lower pick? Now, I don't know a ton about Beal, but like I said, I've been kind of reading up on the situation from people that I trust in those, realms, I suppose. And they have him as, I think, an early day two pick. So, I mean, you think about second round to third round pick. And I think that I almost feel like there's kind of a game with that. I think that if that's the situation and that's who you go with, I think that is probably it's like you bid later, like a round or two later than what the guy is projected at currently. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
and the other thing to consider, getting feedback now. The other thing to consider on it is that the players are in the supplemental draft for a reason.
mm-hmm.
They didn't qualify for the NFL draft, or they chose to stay in school, and then there was a reason that they lost their eligibility,
Right.
Either academically or team suspension, like that, and so they have to apply to get into the supplemental draft. And you only hear every year there's only like a couple players that are even eligible for it, and that's why you never see. I think one of the most recent ones was Josh Gordon, and he got kicked off the team, or he wasn't eligible for off the field reasons. Super surprising. I think it was off the field. I don't know.
Say Beal?
No, I was talking about Josh Gordon, the most recent person I can think of that was selected in the supplemental draft.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think your strategy is right in terms of supplemental draft. Is you bid like a round later than what
Right.
you would have taken him, if you really feel like you can get him then. The good part about the Colts, though, is that, or the Colts situations, is if they think that Beal or Alexander is worth a second or third round pick, they're the third in line to
Mhm.
get it. And then you're the third line, but that doesn't mean you give up the third pick. You give up whatever your pick is in that round. So say, the Colts decide to give up, the third round pick.
Mhm.
And
Wherever they land this year from their play.
yeah, it's wherever they land this year. So when they win the Super Bowl this year, it's the 32nd pick in the third round. And so, that's a pretty good value, I feel like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um,
Um,
there, there just seems, I mean, it's a little difficult to gauge how they view them too, because they've spent so much time doing these, evaluations from this past draft. Wonder how much they've actually evaluated the following class. You know, who is
I bet they have, but not to that point. Like, they've got an idea.
mhm.
Because the scouts have to know where they're going to go, for this upcoming season, and so you've already scouted some of those sophomores and juniors, so you have a general idea of where those guys are going to go or how talented they are. So then you can plan your visit so you can kind of save money, um, going and making your scouting trips.
Right.
And so they've got an idea, but at the same time, it's not a deep dive.
Mhm.
It's not like anything that they've done for any of the draft picks from this past year.
Right. Guys, if you want to call in and be part of the show, 574-626-8689. Otherwise, we're going to go to some of these mailbag questions that we've gotten in one of the threads here. And we're going to go through that for the most part right now. So let's do that. They got one on Jim Irsay from Dan Gazewski. Sorry if I butcher your name there, but he says, "What do you think Jim's criteria is for this year to be considered a success under Ballard? If the decision is not to sign free agents and rely solely upon the draft, and that doesn't pay off, will Jim reevaluate Chris's methodology and demand that he be more active next year in free agency? The current problem is being so reliant on drafts at this stage doesn't give you any depth on the roster in case of injury. We would be smart to add competition by signing guys like Breland and Kendricks." I agree with the Breland and Kendricks. We've talked about that on the show as well. But when you are adding picks like Ballard does, that's what he basically did with this draft is he built a ton of depth, in my opinion, between the
Both
off
lines.
yeah, absolutely, the off season and the draft. And I don't think that Jim is going to get in the way. This has been pretty straightforward with Chris the whole time. Ballard has been a guy that says, "Look, it's going to be a couple years, but this is how we build that, and this is how we build that long-standing depth, not just 1 year at a time." So I mean, I can't imagine, and I believe that you probably feel the same way. I can't imagine that Ursay is worried about what the end result is this year. Plus, I mean, I think we pretty much believe that Chris is ready to go all in on the 2019 free agency class as it is.
Yeah, I think that Ursay in general is not as much of a hands-on owner as people may think he is.
Mm-hmm.
You can tell kind of with how Grigson, he gave Grigson such a long leash. Um, and the fact is, Chris Ballard presented him this plan to begin with.
Right.
Like, there's no way that Chris Ballard went in with one plan and now is all of a sudden instituting another. And realistically, Ursay's been through this before. He was with Bill Polian. Is you recognize that to build for long-term success, you have to build through the draft and then spot fill in free agency. I do think that he's going to focus more on the 2019 free agency, than what he did here in 2018, just because the 2018 free agency market is pretty good, especially if for whatever reason the right tackle position is not resolved. There's going to be some players available. There's going to be some pretty decent pass rushers available. And then the draft next year is supposedly loaded with pass rushers. And
Right.
so you're looking at, and for this system and this defense, you don't need like you can rely on rookies and young players to start because it is a from what everything we've heard, it's going to be a go defense. Just go and get after it, play fast. Don't necessarily think about everything like you had to do in a 3-4, but the 4-3 is built on speed, and that's what they're planning to do, and that really does accelerate the learning curve for rookies
Mm-hmm.
because you're not having to think about as much.
Right.
Um, and it also accelerates the learning curve for example, this year now second year players like Terrell Basham. I think that he's going to really kind of play out this year because they're not going to have to worry about it as much, and he's going to be able to just go and play. And so I think that Ballard is really kind of setting this team up for long-term success, and that Jim Irsay understands that and is totally on board with it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. The next one's from James Fallon. The national media has taken a dim view of the Colts' chances of being any good this year. If you were in their shoes, would that view be different?
Um, yeah, because I actually pay attention to what the Colts have done.
Right.
um, like that's the funny thing is the national media. It appears that they don't pay attention to the team that's outside of their market.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so if they're based in New York or Philly or California, they pay a lot of attention to those teams, but they have no idea what's going on here in Indianapolis. And I think that I when we did our show after the draft, um, or one of the shows after the draft, I forget when we did after the schedule release, and we did our little mini predictions on how the Colts would finish. I think I finished like 9-7. You were 8-8, and neither one of us are like overly optimistic people when it comes to the schedule and how they played last year versus how they play this year. And I think that a lot of people are underestimating the value that a healthy Andrew Luck brings to this team and the improved offensive line and the offensive system that's about to be put in place. Like, if I were a betting person, like I would definitely just put some money on the Colts because who knows? Like, who's going to beat them in the AFC South or in the AFC?
Right.
Like, Andrew Luck ripped up Jacksonville's defense 2 years ago um, when he was hurt, and they still had a fantastic defense. The Patriots are aging and dwindling. And, it's one of those things that I don't have faith in the Steelers to really kind of pull out anything on a consistent basis. And so I look at it and I say, there's not really a super dominant team in the AFC that really I'm necessarily scared of with having Andrew Luck.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it kind of, as Irsay said, it all rests on Andrew Luck's shoulder. And if he's healthy, it makes a huge difference. And I think the national media is just completely overlooking that, how good he was and how good he is and how good he looks now as compared to what he's looked in the past. And so I would look at it differently. But again, I actually pay attention to the Colts and what they've done.
Right.
So
And
that's what makes the difference.
I look at it differently as well. I mean, you have to be, cognizant also of where the Colts fall, so to speak, where they fall, flat at times, and it's going to be basically rest. It's basically going to be because of their youth, and possibly because of some of the lack of talent in a couple key spots or a couple, distinct spots. I don't think that the Colts are going to be bad. I think that the rest of the division is going to be better again this year. So I think that it's not going to, it's going to be hard to prove that the team is actually improving. But I think within, by the end of the year, as they move on, I think this team is going to be, considerably better than most people have given them credit for, without question. So going to take a quick break here, real quick, guys, for our sponsor, and then we'll move on with some more questions. Colts fans, we've got some exciting news about our guy Mike Ernest, our sponsor of the show. Mike's recently moved his business over to Remax Advanced Realty and the Indy Home Pros team, the number one selling real estate team in Indiana. If you're thinking about buying or selling a home, you need to call Mike Ernest at Indy Home Pros team and his Indy Home Pros team. and his team of real estate professionals. They're experts in the greater Indianapolis real estate market, and they've helped people just like you achieve their real estate goals, whether it's using the latest marketing and social media tools to sell your home or using the combined experience of his entire team to find the right home for you. You can rest assured knowing that no one knows the ins and outs of buying and selling homes in the Indianapolis area better than Mike Ernest. Listen, when it comes to buying your home or selling, you need a true pro on your side. Mike Ernest is that guy. He's received numerous industry awards for being a leader in the Indianapolis real estate market. So when it comes to buying or selling your home, don't get burned by amateurs. Contact Mike Ernest, whether you live in Indy or any of the surrounding communities. Mike Ernest and the Indy Home Pros team can help put that number one real estate team in Indiana on your side by calling Mike. You can call him at 317-285-9691, or you can find him online at circlecityforsale.com. That's changed from the last one. Again, that's 317-285-9691 to reach Mike Ernest, or you can get him online at circlecityforsale.com. Make sure you guys are getting a hold of him. Great guy. He's doing a great job. And we appreciate his sponsors. So you guys support him as much as you guys support us. We would appreciate it. Like I said, if you're looking for a home in the Indianapolis area in any way, shape, or form, or you want to sell your house, get a hold of Mike. He's a great guy and he does his job. So thank you guys for that. Thank you, Mike, for sponsoring the show. We appreciate it, my man. Let's move on to some more questions here. We've got basically a couple about the tight ends and the tight end grouping, more or less. How many do we think will be on the final roster? And what do we think this team? We've got a call coming in, so hang on just a second. We'll get to that here in just a minute. So let's take our first call on the Colts cast today. Thank you for calling. You're online. You're online.
Hey, couple things. I just turned it on, so I don't know what you've already covered. But I was wondering two questions. One is, are there any free agents out there that you see that are on the market that we're actually going to sign? Do you see any real indication that anybody we're going to pick up? And the other thing is, looking at the schedule coming up this year and knowing the condition of our team as it stands, can you find enough wins anywhere on that schedule to even have us sniffing a playoff position?
Steven, why don't you hit that one first real quick?
Yeah, I think Rashad Beeland is somebody that the Colts could realistically look at signing. I'm not sure if they will. When you look at Chris Ballard, he's really kind of played everything close to the vest. And so you can look at – I'm not even sure who's left available on the market right now.
Right.
The safeties, I would love for the Colts to sign Eric Reed. He's the best safety on the market. But, again, Rashard Beeland would be another choice for some cornerback depth, which would be nice. He actually, I think, would make a really good starting cornerback on the outside opposite Quincy Wilson. You can move Nate Hairston into the slot. As for patching together enough wins, we actually, oddly enough, just brought this up. When we went through the schedule like a month and a half ago, I look at the Colts and the way that the roster is now, and this is, again, assuming Andrew Luck is healthy, I think the Colts could get to 8 to 9 wins, which puts them right in the hunt for probably a wild card spot and potentially the division, depending on, because I don't really see Jacksonville or Houston really running away with it. Mm-hmm. I see Tennessee actually taking a step back this year with Mike Vrabel as their head coach. And I think that Jacksonville and Houston and the Colts are going to be fighting it out for the division this year. And there's a legitimate shot at it. I mean, you look at it, and the Colts play the third-ranked schedule in the AFC. And so you get those weaker teams. And then you get the, NFC East this year, I think. Mm. And so you get I'm sure of this because you get the Colts come out here to Washington, and then they go like the next week to Philadelphia or vice versa.
Yep, you're right.
Makes me upset because I was going to go to both of those games, and now we'll only get to go to one. I think that there is a legitimate shot because you say they split everything in the AFC, or the AFC South, so you get 3 wins there. You get the Jets, I think, this year. You get the Dolphins this year. You get who's the other? The Bengals. Yep. I think in the NFC North.
Week 1.
Week 1, yeah, that's right. you get a lot of teams that you're not really afraid of. You get the Raiders. I mean, they might be like the John Gruden factor out there, and that might be the worst team in the AFC West.
Yeah. Let me throw some of these non AFC South teams out there to you guys, and just so you guys so that you can understand this. But I mean, Bengals, we don't ever know from season to season what they're going to be. Yes, they've got some really quality talent, but we don't know what the end result's going to be with them. The Redskins are going to be up in the air. They do play the Eagles. That's definitely a different schedule. They play the Patriots. They play the Jets, the Raiders, the Bills. Let's see, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the Titans, and the Giants. I mean, or I'm sorry, the Giants. I don't want to say the Titans because those are AFC South. But I mean, that's not. I mean, yes, there's some potential losses in there. Don't get me wrong, but I think there's as many potential wins in there as anything. And like Steven said, I think if you you can basically every year, regardless of how good one of the teams are, or how bad, I guess, rather, one of the teams are in the AFC South, you can almost bet that there's a pretty good chance they're going to win a couple games in the division. And most of the time, it seems like teams split. That may not be accurate. It just feels that way. But so, I mean, if you take that, you take the 3 wins, you take another 4 or 5 wins at a minimum out of the rest of that schedule, I think that you've got an easy possibility for the Colts to be 500. And I think that's just if Andrew Luck plays okay. I mean, if Andrew Luck comes back and plays well, and some of these rookies play good, and this defense turns out to be, kind of a turnover machine type of team, I think this team can obviously do more than what our expectations are. I won't put any higher expectations on them than 7 to 9 wins, but I think that as the season goes on, probably after the first quarter of the season, we're going to get a much better view and understanding of what this team can legitimately put on the shelf, put on the table for us. But I mean, I don't see that the Bills or the Raiders or
Dolphins.
Yeah, the Dolphins. I don't see the Redskins as a killer. I definitely don't see the Giants
Bengals
as a killer. No, the Bengals, like I said, they're so in and out every year. It's hard to tell. But I think we know what the AFC South for the most part is going to bring us. The rest of the teams, I mean, they're not scary in my opinion, or they're just inconsistent over the past several years, and anything can go either way with that.
Okay, well, I mean, I understand your arguments. I just I look at it and say, Houston wasn't trying to win the 2 games that we played them. They had already given up the season. It looked like they tanked as bad as the basketball team tanked once they lost Watson. And so they're going to be a whole different team this year. That guy was a juggernaut. He had them going like unbelievable numbers. And the Jaguars, of course, are going to be solid. And Tennessee, I agree, might take a step back. We're playing everything in the East, which is great because we don't have to travel as much. That actually helps when you're doing away games. It gives us a little bit of an advantage. I think the only West Coast game we have is the Raiders. I don't know if that's home. Do you know if that's home or away?
It's away.
The Raiders is at the Raiders, yeah.
Yeah, so we do have one West Coast game. But, other than that, I think it's actually to our favor that we're playing the 2 East divisions. But, I think they're all going to be super improved. We can hope that we catch these rookie quarterbacks before any of them hit their stride, and maybe we can squeeze some stuff out. But I just when it first came out, I looked at it and went, "Yeah, we're gonna be in big trouble this year." And I know that luck is good for probably 3 wins over what the team deserves to have, but it looks like our team, the way it's constructed right now, deserves to have about 5 or 6 wins. So I guess I put the right extra number.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a safe area, though. You know what I mean? Because it's hard to say for me. I mean, Luck's never been in a full season where he's had won less than 8 games, and so, where the team's won fewer than 8 games. And he's won 3 or had 3 11-win seasons with awful rosters. It's just so hard for me to presume that he's going to do anything less this year when he comes back. I think he's stronger than he's ever been, ever. I mean, I don't think it's even close. And I think that, he's as motivated as he's ever been, in my opinion. And he's got the knowledge of his past years in the league. Granted, he's going to have some knock some rust off, but I think he's going to come back ready to tear some heads off. And I think it's going to be exciting, especially after he gets his, sea legs, so to speak, at some point in the season. So I'm excited for it. And I think that, it could be a very mediocre season. They could underperform, but I think that there's more. I think there's more than a chance that they are, at least 8 to 9 win team.
Okay. One last question that I thought of while you guys were talking, and that is, what do you think they're going to do with all this cap space? We have this tremendous amount of open cap space, and I'm all for not spending it and saving it, but at some point in time, don't you have to spend it?
They do to an extent. I think it's over a 4-year span where they have to meet.
It's a 4-year rolling span.
It is 4 years, okay. Where they have to meet 90% of their cap.
It's like 90% of the cash on cap.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird computation. The Colts are actually in pretty decent shape in terms of where they're at, just based on their previous spending.
Right.
I do think that when you look at it over time, they are going to roll over. They're definitely going to roll over what's left in this year's cap or whatever they decide to into next year. And they'll probably use it to spot fill some places in free agency next year, but they'll also use it to extend contracts. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking if the Nico Stanzo comes up next year, who else is? This tough part is Grigson left this team with not a lot of players to get extended. Right. Yeah. And so you can save it for a couple of years. But yeah, they're probably going to use it next year, or at least a portion of it next year, either on a free agent, a big free agent, or several smaller free agents to fill holes, and then use the remainder of it to reward their own players. So I mean, it's going to be a lot similar to the Bill Polian style that we had 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, man, for the call. We appreciate it.
Well, just one thing. You guys have a technical glitch because the caller can't hear your guest at all. I could see him talking, lip syncing on the TV, but you couldn't hear anything that he said.
Okay. Well, that's not good. Thank you.
So you know that for the future. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll watch the rest of the show.
All right. Thanks, man.
Bye.
Huh, that's weird. Of course, we have some sort of a weird situation going on, Steven.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Yeah. It was weird, too, because on the initial recording, I was looking at it, and I couldn't figure out why I wasn't hearing you either, but everything's plugged the same way, man. Who knows what's going on with it, but sorry, guys, if for some reason something's up with the recording on there. It'll be better on the podcast. If you're not getting what you need here on YouTube, it'll be better on the show. So if you guys want to call in 574-626-8689 or otherwise, let's get into I'd
more. I'd like to hit on something that he had mentioned kind of as a going away point on there. And it's something that we brought up in the past, that this team last year was in a lot of games late going into the fourth quarter and had an opportunity to win. So yeah, they won 3 games and they were not great in terms of roster, but you have to understand that they were also players that were drafted to be in a 4-3, but they were playing a 3-4. And so I think that this team is going to surprise a lot of people and how well they play this year. And it's, again, this kind of harkens back to the national media question from earlier. It's just, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that people that are paying attention that they're so low on this team, like 32nd out of the league, I think is what like Sporting News or something like that had them. Mm-hmm. But anyway.
Actually, I think probably what that guy's referring to is when he calls in on the phone, he can't hear you as opposed to the YouTube because.
That's what. Oh, that might be it. I don't know. I see the little thing with the volume going up, so I know I'm talking.
Yeah, and you're getting good read through here, so I mean we're good. And I think that's a good point too. We got another caller, Steven. What's up, my man? You are on the Colts cast.
Hey, what's up, Matt? It's Mark. I love your show, man. Talk to you guys on Twitter. It's awesome. By the way, you can hear him. He's just really, really soft.
Oh, is that right?
On the
Okay.
phone.
Yeah. Speak
Yeah,
up,
on
Steven.
YouTube it's great, but on the phone he's a little soft. But it doesn't really matter. I just want to say that forget all of the national media people that down the Colts. I really don't care. I feel like the only thing that they ever gave us credit for was Peyton Manning, and we had really good teams back there. You know, '04 through '09. That carried Peyton at times. I know people don't like to admit that, but Peyton, for some reason, lost his brain sometimes in the playoffs. So as great as he is, and how much we love him, and he absolutely won that Patriots game for us. But you know, it was a two-way street there. But in any case, I digress. Um, I'm really, really excited about this wide receiving core and the running back combination that we have, Naheem Hines and Mack. I think that people are going to be absolutely blown away. I love the confidence that Ebron is showing in kind of the discussions and what we're seeing from him in these OTAs. And I really think that the switching that the coaching staff is going to do with these guys is just going to absolutely blow people away, doing all kinds of crazy stuff from the exact same set, getting the ball out in under 2 seconds most of the time. It's going to be insane. I get the growing pains of the defense. None of us are expecting us to win a Super Bowl this year, so take a deep breath, take a chill pill. It's going to be okay. What I'm excited about is seeing an absolute overnight explosion from the offense. Again, granted, luck is healthy. That's going to and honestly, regardless of luck, because I really do, I don't think that they're joshing us with their excitement with and I'm out drawing a blank on his name right now, but you guys know what I'm talking about. I really do think that they really believe in our backup QB and what we have there. But anyway, I'll hang up and listen to you guys talk about it. But love the show, and I'll talk to you next time.
Hey, thank you, man. We appreciate the call for sure. Thank you for the kind words. We appreciate you guys listening and constantly, trying to be a part of the show. So I think he was talking about Brissett there. Am I wrong, Steven?
Yeah, he was talking about Brissett.
I think
Can you hear me better? I put the microphone up closer to my face.
Yeah, I could hear you fine. It seemed like I think maybe your microphone might have been rubbing on something, and I think that was probably what I was hearing.
That was my bag of chips.
Yeah, your bag of chips was a scratchy. So, yeah, I mean, I think that they do believe in Brissett. I really do. As far as, you can't quantify him and put him in the same category as Andrew Luck without question. But I think that, after last year's experience that he got on the field, he proved that he could, that he had a cannon, that he liked to throw it deep, and he liked to be able to score. The problem is that he couldn't do any of that in the fourth quarter, and that he, had some issues. He had some growing pains last year. I think that if you look at most rookie quarterbacks, you would see some of the similar things. And I'm almost sure that I did a rookie comparison to him, or first year starting quarterbacks, and I don't think he really placed very well in that either. I think he was in the bottom half of rookies over the past 10, 12 years, something of that sort. As far as like overall stats, like completion percentage, net adjusted yards per attempt, all that kind of stuff included, and touchdowns. He didn't throw a bunch of touchdowns. So, I mean, all that included, he didn't have a real productive season when you look at stat lines. But if you look at what that helped him do for his future, I think that definitely is I definitely think that you can consider that a productive year.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the first things that the caller hit on was talking about the skill position players.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm cautiously optimistic about them. I really like the wide receiver group that they have. I think that they're going to make you're going to have like a tough cut there because you only keep 5-6 wide receivers. They've got Hilton, you've got Chester Rogers, who's drawn a lot of praise, and Deion Kane and Therese Fountain are definitely going to be there. You got Ryan Grant that they just signed, so you've got 5 right there. And so, who's your sixth? Do they maybe?
That doesn't matter.
Yeah, like exactly. Like it's a guy who plays special teams.
Right.
Like that's your sixth.
I mean, they're going to run four receivers, pretty
Mhm.
regularly, I think. But once you get to 5 and 6, you're looking at guys who are just going to be helpful for injuries or the occasional week off or just whatever as far as for injuries or bad play or just the mix or the guy coming up, the guy going down. That sixth player is likely to be a different guy, 2 or 3 different times throughout the season for a span of games. So I mean.
Well, and it looks like that they're actually going to take that tight end position and flex it out a lot. From what everybody said, having Eric Ebron as more of a receiving tight end, it gives a lot of options. And then Naheem Hines, I'm super excited about him and his possibilities to be able to be paired or be able to come in with Marlon Mack or being able to come in for Marlon Mack.
Yeah,
they've got a lot of really good, fast players
and big
that can catch the ball and get to that second level and get that burst and get those big gains. That's huge in playing indoors and on a fast surface.
Yeah,
and that's kind of why the past 5 years has frustrated me as a Colts fan, because it never made logical sense to run a 3-4 or run a running scheme on a fast turf.
Yeah, I think this is going to be I think this is going to be one of the funnest offenses that we've seen from the Colts in a long time. When you put Reich's scheme together with Andrew Luck's, like I said, his demeanor this year and his ability to want to come back and just show everybody what he's made of, and you mix that in with team some of these rookies. One of them is going to have a really good season, I think, and it's hard to say. Is it Fountain? Is it Kane? Is it Hines? Is it maybe even Wilkins? You just never know. I think that Wilkins has a lot of potential to be that kind of a sleeper guy on the Colts offense this year. But I think you look at what they're going to do with the offensive line. I think some of those offensive linemen that they brought in, they're going to be good. So this offense, I think, has a real potential to be now. And this, maybe this sounds crazy to me. It doesn't necessarily, but I think that you look at the possibility that they could be top half of the league. Or right around that 16 area. Between 15 and 18. I don't think that's unreasonable at all.
I'll say this: if Luck's healthy, I'll put it at top 10.
Yeah,
easy top 10.
Yeah, but Luck is going to be healthy. Stop it, Steven. You're killing me with this qualification.
Hey, you know me. I always have a qualification. Now, I am on board beyond anybody else that Luck is going to be healthy. I've never once doubted that.
Right.
But I will always say if Luck's healthy.
It almost just flows off the tongue now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
So let's talk about this tight end group, because this was one of the questions before we started getting a couple calls. The Ebron, Jack Doyle, and then kind of what do they do from there? Swope, does he get a lot of the snaps? Who in your mind kind of becomes that third guy to really rely on, because they're going to run a lot of 2 and 3 tight end sets in this offense, and Ebron is going to be kicked outside quite a bit. He's almost going to be a secondary slot guy. So I think that's maybe that kind of, I don't want to say it disqualifies him from the tight end, but it also kind of increases the receiving position simultaneously, because you've got a guy in Jack Doyle who can do both. Not necessarily, he's definitely not a speed guy, but Travis is on the team. I think he's exciting.
Who I was going to go with probably is the Travis Ross.
And he changed his body shape too, or body weight too. He went down. He brought some of his weight down, if I'm not mistaken. So he's trying to be a little more of that speed guy, I think. But obviously we know what Ebron brings. Okay, he's speed, big guy, not a blocker. Travis trying to become a little more well-rounded, I think, to become that third guy as well. And I really like his potential. He's one of the guys that I am so anxious to see in camp. I really want to see what he does, where they've got him lined up, how often they've got him running with the ones and twos, just as a complimentary guy to the offense. I think that Luck is going to love that guy. I mean, he's 6'7". Are you kidding me? I mean, long arms too, and I mean that's going to be a guy that he just says, man, just run down the middle of the field, and a safety's going to have to try to knock him out to keep him from being a strong guy. And I think that him and Swope are going to be kind of battling for that, because Swope is a pretty good combination of speed and power as well. He's much stronger, I think, than people realize. In last year, remember, in camp, he made Brandon Williams kind of look small. And Brandon Williams is not a small guy. So I'm anxious to see that. I'm anxious to see how he returns after a year off as well. I think his is going to be a little bit different. I think his is going to be a little more of a climb. I think Travis has kind of a head up on him right now.
Yeah, and I think the tough part with Swoop is that you really don't know what he can do on the field. Like, you've seen like a couple games where he had a couple decent catches, but he always seems to find a way to get hurt. And so that's tough. I think that Ross Travis. I think you're right, though. I think it's going to be Ross Travis or Eric Swope for that third tight end spot. I really don't think Mo Alley Cox or Daryl Armstrong, Daniels.
Yeah, Daryl Daniels. Yeah.
I don't think either Mo Alley Cox or Daryl Daniels really challenges for that position. I think that Ross Travis and Daryl Daniels are going to be kind of like, Ross Travis is going to knock him out pretty much, I think. So I think you're going to run with the three: Eric Ebron, Jack Doyle, and Ross Travis, and then whoever wins out. Like, I think Swope is there by default, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they use them, because Doyle was the security blanket last year for Brissett, but yeah, I just don't. I'm just not sure. I'm excited because they if they use them similar to how the Eagles used them, like, the tight ends are going to be lined up all over the field, and you run 13 personnel, and that really puts defenses in a tough position. So if you have three tight ends that you can put on the field, and two of them can catch passes, which we know that Doyle can, we know that Ebron can, we know that Swope can. And so you put all three of those guys out on the field at one time, it really puts defenses in a tough position, because you have to determine whether you're going to line them up and put a corner on them, then the tight end can just body the corner, or you're going to put a safety on them and bring it down. That leaves, a safety not being able to cover a wide receiver over the top, or you put a linebacker on him and the tight end just beats him with speed. And you put three of them out there. Like, it could be a really interesting chess game with the tight end position and how Reich decides to use them.
Yeah, I agree. And it's going to be fun. Like I said, Wilkins is a guy that I've kind of kept my ear out for. I want to hear more about him, because he's a very steady running back. Not a guy who's going to be flashy, I don't think, like Hines and them guys, but he doesn't have the speed of Donald Brown. But if you remember in Donald Brown's last couple of years, he was very, once he gets to that second level, that's when he really goes straight line speed to try to pick up some extra yards. Wilkins doesn't have a lot of that, next level speed, but he is a very smart running back. And that's something that I think is going to play well for him, especially if he becomes successful in the first, however many games he plays. If he, makes the roster, actually is, one of the 46 that are dressed, all that good stuff that come with every week. So I think he's one of the guys I'm really keeping my eye on. I want to see what he does in mini camp and training camp and beyond. I'm pretty excited about that. Steven, we're going to hit this one last question here, and it's kind of for you. It's kind of up your alley. So, and we'll conversate about this, but I know that you would like to answer this as well. And then we'll get you out of here, man. And I've got a fire in the backyard that we're getting ready to, roast some marshmallows and stuff like that. I've got the week off, so this has been a very relaxing week for me. So
Yeah,
I'm
I'm going to be honest with you. It looks like you've been taking some time off because that tan is fantastic. I don't know if it's a change in the lighting over there or whether that's like a legit tan.
I
But
did get a comment on the lighting
good.
thing, how much better the lighting is, but I definitely have changed my setup with the show a little bit and given myself some more room here. I was kind
Or
of
maybe you changed the color of your base makeup. I don't know.
no makeup, knock that off. You're gonna give
All
me a
right, what's
bad.
this last question?
You're gonna give me bad juju here. Why do you believe certain players get taken off draft boards completely for teams, but end up being sought after once the draft is over? Why not use a seventh round selection on a player falling for whatever off the field issues, injury, etc.? Most seventh rounders fail to make the team anyhow. If you miss with the pick, who cares at that point? At least then you guarantee that you get the talented player and there's a higher percentage chance of them making the roster. Also, do you have any players who you can think of that you wish the Colts would have spent a late round pick instead of letting them go to another club?
Yeah, I can name one right off the top of my head. Lael Collins.
Yeah.
When that whole situation, now it was a crazy situation. But at the same time, you sit there and you're like, okay, well, let's go ahead and see what he can do. Or do you think this guy's really going to sit out for that time? But anyway, honestly, like to me, I'd rather take a flyer on a guy in the seventh round than to risk having him have options.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I've got a guy that's like a third or a fourth, now I'll tell you this: if a guy's been pulled off your board, it's for a reason. And if he's been pulled off your board, you're not taking him. Period.
Right.
Like you're not even likely to pursue him as an undrafted free agent, because realistically, NFL teams will have somewhere between 100 and 150 draftable players, and of those players, you're also going to get your undrafted free agents from that. And that's for players that they believe fit their scheme and fit like what they want to do, both character, all of those things, and really kind of checks all the boxes. And so the reason you take somebody in the seventh round, or why I would take somebody in the seventh round, if I believe that there's an opportunity for them to play, then I'd rather take him and lock him up for 3 years, because it's like a locked in contract and it's cheap.
Mm-hmm.
Now, undrafted free agents, the reason why you don't take them at that point and let them go to undrafted free agent is because you don't want to guarantee that contract. And so, most contracts, you're going to have to eat some dead money if you cut a seventh round pick. Now it's negligible in the long term. But as for me, I'd personally rather take the seventh round flyer on a guy that I thought maybe was a third or fourth round talent that for whatever reason has slipped,
Right.
than let him test the market in undrafted free agency. But again, if he's been pulled off your draft board, it's for a reason and you're not taking him.
Yeah. I mean, because if you consider it this way, let's say that you do negotiate with him post draft, excuse me, and then you end up getting the player that you thought you were going to get if you would have, you get the guy that you were worried that you were going to get to begin with. Well, I mean, what's the difference? What's the point? It really just doesn't do anything for your team either way. So if he's not on your draft board, then you just let him go. I mean, he's not a guy that you're worried about getting later. If you get him, then great, because you didn't spend a pick on him. And then if you bring him in and he's a wash, then it's kind of you just you wash your hands of him. But on the other hand, if you do pick him and he's got these problems and these issues, but if you have anybody that's even close that's on your board that gives you some sort of intangible that you think can benefit your team, and that's a guy that you lose, then I think that you could possibly be losing one of those diamond in the rough players that teams occasionally end up nabbing. That's not an every year season, but I think that's the mindset going forward is if the guy's not on your board, he's not on your board. It doesn't have anything to do with fifth round, seventh round. He's just not on your board.
It's like Mo Hurst this year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and I think that was a legitimate thing for, the other 31 teams. It's hard to tell because of where they drafted him. But I think that most of the teams, if he's not drafted by then, they were taking his health situation very, very seriously. and we're
And
not.
he was off their boards.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. You have to believe that. There's no way he goes that late. If anybody besides the Raiders has him on their board.
yeah, absolutely. And that's, I mean, this is almost the perfect example of it. To go to that question is, you had 31 teams that had him to. Who knows? The Raiders might have even had him off their board, but they said, "Well, you know what? Let's just take a flyer on it." But look, you had Mo Hurst was arguably a top, a first round talent, at the very worst, a second round talent based on field play.
Right.
The Raiders ended up getting the fifth round, something like that. And so you had every single team in the league passed on him at least 4 times. Well, maybe not at least, but because some teams didn't have as many picks. But every team in the league passed on him.
Right.
In one of the first through fourth rounds. And so he was off their board. Like, there's no way that they had him on their board and was a 7th round pick.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just that game of roulette that GMs play every year. Sometimes they get bit for it, and sometimes sometimes it comes and just helps them carry a draft class almost, to the next level. Just really depends on the GM and his approach, and it also depends on the results, because if the results come back and you've been bitten by it a few times before in the past, you're probably not too keen on going after it again. But thank you guys for a good show. I think that it turned out pretty well, even though we didn't get very many calls. I'm assuming that the NBA playoffs is on tonight. The NBA playoffs has been great for me. I mean, I've caught up on Netflix. I don't watch any of that crap. I couldn't honestly
watch the Stanley Cup.
Dude, I played basketball for and through college, and I can't even stomach an NBA game anymore.
So bad.
I know. It really is. I haven't watched a single playoff game,
and it's funny because I feel like I probably should watch some of the games, because my wife's family is family friends with one of the players of families, and grew up with them, and so we've got a connection to a couple to at least one player, and we have zero interest in it. My 3-year-old daughter and I will sit and watch the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah, there you go. I wouldn't watch that either, but like I said, Netflix,
should. It's good. Right? Playoff hockey's good.
Thank you to our sponsor, Mike Ernest, and the Remax Advanced Realty team that he's going through with Indy Home Pros. Like I said, the #1 selling real estate team in Indiana. Thank you, Stephen, for joining me tonight. Thank you for our callers. Thank you for the questions on the show. Appreciate it very much. We'll get some more of these in here. We're putting posts on Stampede Blue. I'm putting notice in the fan posts. So make sure that you guys are getting all of that taken care of, so that you guys, if you want to call in, that you're calling in, during the show. We're going to start these at 10:30. We're going to go in usually on Wednesdays or Thursdays. So make sure you guys are getting to StampedeBlue.com to check out that. I'll put that up around 5, 6 o'clock so that you guys are well aware of it. But thank you, all in all, for all of your calls, for all of your questions. Stephen, thank you for joining me tonight with a teething child. I appreciate you. Sorry for keeping you quite a bit longer than I said that I would, but
yeah, I mean, you do this every time to me.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of my thing. Just 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, my wife will tell me, no matter how far she's from someplace, it's 15 minutes, no matter what. It could be an hour away. No, yeah. I'll be there in 15 minutes. That's must be a Jersey thing. I don't know. I don't get it.
Thank you guys all for listening. Make sure you guys get into Apple Podcasts, hook us up with a rating and review. Definitely appreciate those. We'll talk to you guys next time right here on the Colts Cast.